the Click&Go Travel Podcast, fueling your wanderlust with far-flung off-the-beaten-track destinations to just across the water and everything in between.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Click&Go Travel Podcast. This week we're chatting to one of our customers who's recently travelled with us, Catriona Connor. Hi, Catriona.
Good morning.
Good morning. Catriona's booking experience was unique in that she was travelling with her son with additional needs. So this week we're going to be covering more about travelling with additional needs and kind of stepping away from our normal destination tips and things to do with this special guest.
Yeah, so I'm Paul, obviously, and I have known of Catriona and got to meet Catriona this year. She's close friends with my partner, so I have to declare my interest. We knew of each other by name, so I knew the name, and I knew that Catriona had worked in Beaumont and had all of this sort of stuff. But Catriona contacted us early this year, inquiring about a holiday. So what we want to do today is chat about, forget the destination piece, forget the product piece, understand from a customer's point of view the challenges that customers face when travelling with a family member who has additional needs. We're going to be really honest about Rory, and Catriona's very happy to chat about Rory and all of what's going on for Rory and her family. But the real benefits I want to get across from this podcast are, that it is possible for families with people in the family with additional needs to get a great holiday experience. And I also want it to be, from a travel agent's point of view, a really good learning opportunity for us to understand the need for us to dig deep with the questions, ask sometimes the intrusive, invasive questions in order that we can understand the issues that are affecting our customers and then put things together. We can't fix everything, but if we are open and ask the right questions, I think we can create something quite memorable. So we're pretty much just going to chat, and Catriona's going to tell us, how the holiday came about, where the ideas came from, and the process. And we're going to get some really good, I think, learning opportunities for us who don't operate in the world of additional needs and need to operate in the world of additional needs. And I also want to just say to people, if we say the wrong thing or if we use the wrong word, apologies in advance. It's not our intention. We genuinely are just trying to get under the bonnet with this topic this morning. So over to you. Tell us about how the holiday came about. How did you and Paddy decide, okay, we're going? And tell us a bit about Rory too.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Jill. Thanks for having me here today. So, Paddy and I have two children. We have Rory, who is 12, and Clodagh, who is 10. And as my mother, the Lord Mercener, used to say, we were late out of the blocks. So we had done a lot of our travelling before we actually got married. And then Rory came along, and it became quite apparent in a short space of time, about when he was about 2.5 to 3, that, Houston, we have a problem here. He was had no speech. He had lots of sensory issues. He didn't seem to understand what we were saying. Now in retrospect, when I look back, he had glaringly obvious signs of autism. But like everybody, you kind of stick your head in the sand and you say, oh, he's a boy and he's slow to speak and he'll come around in his own time. Anyway, that was nigh on 10 years ago when we started down the diagnosis route. And Rory is now has been diagnosed with autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or as those of us would know, ADHD. He has an intellectual disability. He is non-verbal, and he has very complex behavioural issues. So when people talk to you about autism, they talk about a spectrum.
Yes.
So some people would say, sure, autism, it's, every second child now is getting a diagnosis of autism. And yes, that is quite true. A lot more children are now being diagnosed, but autism is most definitely a spectrum. You can have a child who has issues with anxiety, with sensory processing issues, an intolerance. A simple example would be like an intolerance of being able to walk down the frozen aisle in Tesco because 1, the temperature is too cold for them, 2, the lights are too bright, or 3, they can audibly hear a humming of the freezers that you or I can't. But that child can manage maybe to go to mainstream school, can get on a bus, can do public transport, can shop. Whereas for our son, he would be the further end of the spectrum.
Okay.
Some people use an expression high functioning and low functioning. They're difficult phrases to try and discuss because, as somebody described to me quite recently, if I don't have my coffee in the morning, I'm very low functioning. So for Rory, he can be very high functioning at certain times of the day in certain situations, but he is non-verbal and he has an intellectual disability and he has all these complex behavioural issues. So it was a huge thing for us to undertake the task of trying to go away on a family holiday.
Okay.
How did we come about deciding to go on a holiday? Both the children made their Holy Communion last year. And rather than having a big party, which a lot of Irish families seem to do, we decided that we wanted to make it a memorable occasion for the children. And we decided we would try and take them away just for 2 nights. And I got this daft notion that we would go to Disneyland Paris because my daughter is now 10 but was 9 at the time. And we said we have a small window of opportunity where she will appreciate the Disneyland piece. And that was a DIY holiday. I booked that myself. I, did all the research, and it was an enormous amount of work and planning. I was a complete ball of stress. I arrived at Charles de Gaulle, I will never forget it, and this lovely woman in the car park, we had a valet coming to pick us up to bring us to our hotel, and I heard a woman calling me, Madame, 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 behind, and of course I thought I was too young to be called Madame, but anyway, I turned to her and she was looking at me and I thought I had dropped something, and she came over and she said to me, I hadn't even noticed her, but she and her husband had been travelling on the Aer Lingus flight with us and he was in a wheelchair, so he got priority boarding as well. And she just turned to me very kindly and said, "You're wonderful with your son." And I burst out crying in the car park.
Wow.
But I think it demonstrated the level of stress and anxiety that there is around travelling on holidays.
Yeah.
However, we did Disneyland Paris. We did the 2 days. It wasn't the best fit for Rory. He tolerated the first day, didn't really tolerate the second day. But we came home and Paddy and I got into the kitchen at home in Clontarf and we put on the kettle and we made toast because we hadn't eaten properly for the 2 days either. And we're not the most demonstrative couple in the world, but we both hugged each other and gave a big sigh of relief and said, we did it.
Wow, well done.
Well done.
So we turned around and we said, would you do it again? And not obviously that night, but a couple of nights later we had the conversation and I said I would, but I would like to try a sun holiday where it's warm, where there's the beach, where there's the pool, where there's simple food. Because definitely Rory has a lot of issues around eating,
Okay.
and his dietary needs as well. And that's really how it started. So it came from our first experience with travelling, and then it was trying to get the right fit for a holiday for us. And we had started with maybe we'll do 5 days, maybe we'll do 7. So you have to have that conversation piece first of all.
Yeah.
And that's really how we came about deciding to try and book a holiday.
Yeah. And then I think I got a text, or you texted Brian, and he mentioned it to me, and then we picked up. So we had a conversation, and I'm so passionate about travel in general. I hate exclusion. So for me, this was a real opportunity to do something for somebody who Brian had great regard for. So therefore it was easy. Like the fact that we knew each other made it just that little bit easier to ask the questions. But then I was kind of putting my travel agent hat on and saying, right, this has to work. Paul, you have a job to do here. So we had 1 or 2 conversations on the phone, and for me, what was critical was understanding the full range of, okay, so there's mum and dad, and there's a son and daughter. The son has additional needs, and they are, as you outlined already, quite severe. So it's very challenging to travel with somebody who has that level of severity of additional needs. But you have parents who need a holiday, and you have other children in the family who have a right to a holiday.
Absolutely.
And then you have the family unit who want to have the same wonderful experiences that other families have when they get away. So for me, at times, in terms of the business head, the alarm bells go off because I would have the risk person in the office going, don't touch. This is too complex. We can't provide the level of care, the level of
support
approach
or whatever
and understanding. We don't know enough about it. So you'd have the risk alarm bells going off. You have the insurance alarm bells going off, because Ireland is not the friendliest place when it comes to insurance. And then you also, from a legal point of view, you have the legal people saying, oh no. So you actually, as an industry, we have, restrictions, external restrictions, not imposed on us, but kind of ringing bells or, pushing red buttons from a risk point of view, from an insurance point of view, and from a legal point of view. But I think if we approach it knowing that they're in the background, and we create the right environment to get the answers to those questions that we really need to get in order to match the holiday, we can do this. And I think you're proof that we can do this.
Yes.
And, I think we did it because you were okay with the questions. I was really anxious about the questions because I thought I was intentionally having to be quite intrusive, and in a lot of cases it was a little easier because I knew you, but I didn't know you properly.
Sure.
And I'm just thinking, of a travel agent with a customer walking in off the street where they don't know, that is for the most part what's going to happen here. So what I want to do is explore a little bit about how do we do the questioning piece? So you as a family have decided what you're going to do. You pick up the phone to the travel agent and we start having the conversations. And I literally had to ask you exactly what Rory's needs were in terms of what you have outlined. And then between the two of us, we had to figure out, what are the options here? What is going to work? So let's go through that piece a little bit in terms of understanding. So for you, how did it feel for somebody to be questioning you about your son?
Well, I suppose living in the world of additional needs, and any parent will testament to that, you spend your time having very in-depth conversations with predominantly other healthcare professionals about your child. And if I had a penny for every time I was asked, so when did he start walking? When did he make his first sound? So people ask you these questions from a very, very early stage. So just to reassure you and reassure any other travel agent out there, it is highly unlikely that you will ask a wrong question, because we are used to being questioned. I was in the pharmacy only last week on Saturday and picking up medication for Rory, and I was being questioned about the amount of medication that was being given and why I was coming to collect it again. And, you don't take offence because you understand people have a job to do, and equally they are trying to protect you and protect the individual. So as a travel agent, you equally have a job to do, and you want to protect us as your customer and as the vulnerable individual who's travelling with you. So there really isn't a wrong question that you can ask, Paul. And in fact, I think it is naive of any parent or guardian who's trying to book a holiday for their family member with additional needs to take offence at anything that is asked, because we have so much experience at being asked very personal questions that it's kind of second nature to us. And I'm not trying to diminish the significance and how challenging it is for somebody who is only been used to dealing with what they call neurotypical people, as in individuals that don't have additional needs. It is kind of awkward to have to ask, so can your child speak? Or, is he incontinent? Will he have to wear nappies on a flight? All of these kind of things may come up in conversation. But it's okay. It's all right to ask that. And I think, as you said in your opening piece as well, Paul, if you're honest with people at the very outset, and life has taught me it's all about how you approach people and how you speak to them, whether it was in my professional life or in my personal life. I think if you're upfront and honest with somebody at the outset, it benefits you in the long run, because if you say, look, I'm really sorry, I have a little boy with additional needs. He is not going to be able to queue. Can somebody please help me? they will.
Yeah.
You know, my husband was out walking, Paddy was out walking with Rory the other evening, and we've got one of these little pop-up ice cream places on the Clontarf Road. And as he said, there was 3 or 4 heads in the queue in front of him, you know. And Rory was getting excited because he knew he was going to get an ice cream. He was queuing up, and he has an electronic device, and he kept hitting the button, and it kept saying ice cream, ice cream. And then he'd go into the pictures and go, Dad, Dad, ice cream, ice cream. And the 3 young fellas in front that were like all in their black hoodies and on their black electric bikes, you know, that you probably in another life would be running away from, said, excuse me, mister, do you want to go ahead of us in the queue? So like there is awareness out there, and there is understanding among some people. So I don't think there's really a wrong question to ask.
I think it's really good to know, because today we're dealing with the more kind of neuro-intellectual side, but we could also have physical challenges and physical issues which are equally challenging from a travel industry point of view in terms of access through the airport to the destination and in the hotel. And one of the key things that, you know, we do our best, you know, as an industry. I think we do our best generally, no matter who the customer is, to match their needs, because like we all have needs in terms of this is what I want and this is what I don't want, and we're quite good at verbalizing them. So I'm really pleased to hear you saying, please ask those questions when there's additional needs. In terms of the requirement, it's all about, you know, just being comfortable in saying what we need to do. Then we can go and match the holiday, because it's doing what we do as a profession with some added questions, and being very clear with the customer and being very clear yourself. Well, we can't fix or change the aircraft. We can't change the access to the aircraft, the route through the airport, the route to the destination or the property. So we can't work miracles. And I think that's sometimes where the risk insurance and the legal people need to kind of just accept what we're doing when we're trying to provide holidays to a broader market, that we will do it in the best possible way that we can. So we can't structure a property specifically for Rory, but what we can do is eliminate what won't work. And I think that was the process that we started with. It was kind of eliminating, and sometimes I find that useful for any holiday question that I'm dealing with, whether it's the travel clinic or whether it's friends. I'll try and figure out, and it might be a useful approach for us in terms of what won't work. And I think we kind of looked at that in terms of, well, what won't work? Because I was thinking, if the behaviour is challenging, I was concerned that other people around might object to Rory, or you know, that would be uncomfortable for you and for the rest of the family in a hotel environment or in a restaurant environment as to what it would be. And we suggested a villa, and you're like, no, that's not going to work because that's too remote in terms of Clodagh, Paddy and me. We want a bit of socialisation. We want to use the facilities. So there's real balance. There's a balance in understanding it's the entire family unit or the couple that need this holiday, subject to the needs that we need to underpin, and subject to an understanding, and it needs to be a joint understanding both from the customer and from the agent, that we can't work miracles, but we can narrow the selection to the point that we are providing the most suitable type of holiday for your needs. So it's the full kind of communication piece, like you talk about the verbal diarrhea piece, but it did allow us, it took a little bit longer, but it did allow us kind of fine tune it, which I think was good, because we did eliminate things around duration of flight, times of flights, transfer times, property size, you know, so we were able to kind of go, let's keep the flight duration reasonably short, let's keep the timing of the outbound and the inbound flight reasonable enough, in kind of normal
day
living
routine.
So, you know, the early 6:30 is a 4 a.m. check-in. Is it
not a runner?
You know, like, and the same on the return, and even the checkout of the property, making sure that there isn't too much time between checking out of the property and getting on the aircraft. The transfer, I think we managed, even though, you know, you did reasonably long transfer. Like we ended up with a holiday in Alcudia, in Mallorca. So shortish flight, 2.5 hours.
Very manageable.
About a 45-minute, 1 hour transfer, but the property was kind of the driver, because it was a low-rise property, the Sea Club Resort, and it was only 2 floors. And then we were able to talk to the agent and say, we specifically need
like a ground
ground floor.
You
know, so we were able to narrow it. But talk us through the kind of how the holiday went, you know, from the check-in piece to the end, and then we'll come back because you've some great assets and material.
My props.
Your props in terms of the communication piece with Rory. But
Yeah.
let's do the holiday piece first.
The holiday, it was so exciting. I mean, it was so exciting. And I suppose the one thing a lot of my friends would have said to me was, and did you organise all of this yourself, Catriona?
Yeah.
Because they know what a fusspot I am. And I said, well, actually, no, I didn't. And they were kind of a little bit stunned because they knew the control freak in me. And I said, well, my experience of Paris just really made me feel I was exhausted when I came home from Paris. Now, Paris Disneyland is exhausting for anybody because it's non-stop, okay? But it was the emotional exhaustion that really, you know, I felt after. And you felt such a sense of responsibility and that ownership. And, you know, not alone are you managing your children's expectations of the holiday, you're managing your own expectations, and I was managing Paddy's expectations too. In that, you know, maybe it's my own personal flawed personality, but if it wasn't, it had to work. And if it didn't work, I would have felt responsible for having blown this amount of money on a holiday that was a disaster. So I suppose at the outset I said, I'm not going to try and organise this myself. I'm going to seek advice. I'm going to look for help. And even the amount of time you have to spend researching, looking up, checking flights. And when you have the know-how, you know, these things are second nature to you. But when you're like me, at 10 o'clock at night, turning on the laptop to start researching, and, you know, by 10:30, you nearly have to check for a pulse to see are you still alive because you're losing the will to live. So that was a huge thing for me, was try and offload the responsibility to somebody else to do the research for me, which is why I approached, obviously, yourselves. And initially I also wanted to know or really felt that when you contact a travel agent, 9 times out of 10, or probably 10 times out of 10, there are going to be agents working in the business that have visited the resort that you're thinking of going to. So they have on the ground experience, they have visited these places, they're familiar with the resort. So, you know, all of these things are hugely reassuring for a parent like me when you're trying to book a holiday. So it just went so seamlessly well. It was super. You know, as you quite rightly said, we had that conversation beforehand. So I had said to you, we're thinking of Mallorca. Paddy went there in his 20s. I'm not sure if it's quite the same 30 years later. Shouldn't really be disclosing that we're all in our 50s. But anyway, you know, he would have gone around with 10 of his mates on a moped around Mallorca. You know, we're really not going to kind of do that. And I remember saying to you when I met you, you know, we're not party animals. We're not going to be out all night. So we're looking for somewhere that is a family resort, that is a short flight, relatively short flight, but that it could still give us the warmth of a sun holiday with beach, with pool. And we clearly identified that Rory was a huge risk of a flight risk of running away. He has a tendency to throw electronic devices all over the place and smash them. So I didn't want us to be on a first floor, let alone a 10th floor of an apartment block where not alone devices, but also jeepers, like, you know, could he potentially climb over our railings on us as well? And they're really, really real live issues that we have with children with additional needs. Safety is a huge, huge concern. And so, you know, once we had booked the holiday, you had whittled it down to 2 resorts for us to look at. You had whittled down the choice of apartments to 3 in each of the resorts. You came back to me and said, look, Catriona, will you think of flying on a Sunday instead of a Saturday? It's going out with Ryanair, but the times are better. So, I mean, you have no idea the amount of stress that took off my shoulders because even though ultimately the final decision was left to myself and Paddy, you kind of had made the best choices for us. So you had whittled it down to the best potential match for what our needs were. And that was why it was hugely beneficial not to try and do it myself.
And it's really refreshing for me in the industry to think that this is what we do. This is what we do day in, day out across the travel agents in Ireland in terms of solving the needs for people. It's just great to hear somebody say because we know what we're talking about. We know the flights, we know the routes, we know the destinations, we know the transfers. And you know, it's nothing to say that the consumer can't do all of this themselves. They can. But I really think
it's arduous,
you've explained
though, Paul.
It's the additional responsibility. Like, you still have to do the mum to Rory, the wife to Paddy, the mum to Clodagh. And you have your own kind of holiday needs too, in terms of, I want to enjoy this. So why bring on the added pressure? You know, hand it over to somebody else, because that's what we do as an industry.
Them. And trust them.
And you know, it helped them, because it wasn't me making the final choice. It was me saying, I suggest these couple of resorts and these couple of properties, and you're able to go, yeah, this is what we need. And also, by the way, we absolutely really need that ground floor. So, and that can be challenging, because sometimes the special requests you can't always guarantee.
Sure.
And you need to kind of balance the expectations and manage the expectations that, you know, again, it's going back to the working miracles. We can't change the building, but we can make sure that they know, and we can get the request in early. We can do the request again the week before travel. And I would always be saying to customers where we have special requests, also say to them at check-in, and just make sure that they know. So we got to that point. So tell us then, so we've the holiday chosen, we've the holiday booked, we've everything in place. You get to the airport.
We got to the airport. So what I would advise any family, and I'm sure everybody in the travel industry knows, that actually Dublin Airport, to be fair, are absolutely superb at managing people with additional needs. If you go onto their website, the Dublin Airport Authority, you can apply for a specific lanyard that your child can wear, or a wristband. If your child won't wear it, I wore it for Rory because he had no intention of putting it around his neck. And you know, you can't sweat the small stuff. You just gotta go with whatever works. Again, you have to remember, you're on holidays. You're no different than anybody else. Take the stress out of it. So I had applied for the important flyer lanyard. So that really gives you kind of priority when you're queuing or checking in. But what I would say to a lot of people is to use the other service of OCS in the airport as well. Because again, a lot of people think that's people with physical disabilities that need a wheelchair to move from A to B. It's super. It's absolutely superb. So we had a staff member meet us in the arrivals hall. When we arrived, you go to the OCS desk. They have a staff member in a high-vis jacket who was such a good person, such a kind, compassionate person. Rory didn't want to have anything to do with him at all. He was kind of, you know, let's get going. I'm out of here, kind of, you know. But he actually made Clodagh the priority. He said, oh, well, now here, if you're going on holidays, you know, over here you come. You can help me to do the check-in. He brought her over. He got us the priority boarding card.
Is it like a chaperone service?
It was almost like a personal chaperone to bring you around. It was super. He checked in. He checked our bags in for us. He said, do nothing. I am going to look after everything. In fact, his line was, never fear, Frankie's here.
And this is available no matter what airline you're flying with. This is like an airport facility.
This is the airport facility. And what I didn't know at the time was that I could have booked something similar in Palma. But I can tell you about that after when we come to the leaving the airport. I could have booked it in Palma, but didn't know it at the time.
I didn't know.
However, again, that's a learning piece that I will know for again. I say that know for again, which is, you know, it's amazing to think that I would consider going on a holiday again. But anyway, we got to the airport. Frank had brought us around, and the benefit of it is, you know, the lanyard is super, and it does identify for staff members in the, you know, come on this way, you know, and they will guide you this way as well. But the fact that we had the staff member from OCS with us, we got priority through queues, through security, you know, in through the duty free. So we travelled with Ryanair. Out of Terminal 1, and as we know, there's a significant walk to most of your boarding gates, and Rory thankfully loves walking, and he was super at the walking, but it's at his own pace. And he was kind of ambling along, and I was saying, oh my God, will you move it, son? We have to get down here. I don't want the boarding gate to be closed. And we rounded the corner, and Frank had organised a little golf buggy. So on the four of us we were like Donald Trump going round Doonbeg in this golf buggy. Rory was wildly excited. Clodagh was out the back, letting me down dramatically by shouting, see you later, losers, as we were bombing past everybody walking along.
I love it.
But again, it was another, like, it was just, the only way I can describe it is they went that extra mile
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
They made us feel like
Yeah.
VIPs. They made us feel like the Trumps in Doonbeg.
Yeah.
You know, we pulled up at the boarding gate. He let Rory sit in the golf buggy because your man loved it. You know, he was kind of
Yeah.
looking around, you know. And he let him sit there until we were ready to board. He went up. He did all the negotiation with the boarding gate people, with
Brilliant.
the staff, you know. We were brought down to the aircraft or to the tarmac. He walked out with us to the tarmac. He walked us right up to the back of the plane because you had booked our seats for us, Paul.
Yeah.
And that was another thing that we had discussed as well. Rory has a lot of sensory seeking behaviour, so he
Yeah.
does a lot of slapping and banging,
Yeah.
pulling of hair, and I flagged it with you. If we're booking seats, I want one of us to be sitting in front of Rory.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually the suggestion you came back with me was, Catriona, how about we put 2 in one row and 2 in the front? And that actually was super.
Yeah.
Because I was looking for 3 of us in one row and 1 in front. But 2 and 2 was great
Yeah.
because I could hop in then and sit with Clodagh for a little while.
Yeah.
And equally, Paddy came back to give me a break when we were coming home because Rory was a bit stressed coming
Yeah.
home, and he got in beside him. But Frank walked us right up to the aircraft, and you know, I had my social story put together for Rory, which was a story about the steps as a journey through the airport, and even down to the pictures of the aircraft. Rory was pointing over at the Ryanair plane as we were walking on the tarmac. So the whole preparation piece, I was almost emotional. I
Yeah,
had such a
I
lump
can
in my
imagine.
throat. We even stopped for a photo op on the staircase, you
think
know,
I
at the
got that.
back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, these are things that I thought we would never do, you know,
Yeah.
never do. But I suppose my point with all of this big, long preamble is ask for help.
Yeah.
Avail of every opportunity. I know
Yeah.
there are many parents out there
Yeah.
that will say, no, he has to queue up like everybody else, and you know, life isn't straightforward, and you know, this is important learning for him. Well, you know what, folks, I would say this is a holiday for everybody. And why put the additional stress on yourself of making your child, who has huge issues with queuing or huge issues with crowds, why can't you just make it easy for yourself?
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
your holiday.
Why put that onus and responsibility on you, and you're standing
From
you
what
know,
you're saying, the DAA, OCS, and this lad Frank are really well trained to do this. This is what they want to do. They
Yeah.
want you to have a great experience through their facility.
Absolutely.
They want you to not have the stress, and I think they want the buzz of helping
And it's
Clodagh
impossible
and
to
Rory
thank,
and
yeah.
having the golf buggy experience. You know, because I also have to admit, to a certain extent, it was really, I felt really good in terms of it took more
to get
time,
positive
but I
feedback.
Felt, I felt, God, we're actually making a difference. We're doing something, you know,
Hugely.
like the business day to day is the money side of the business, and that's the numbers, and that's fine. But this was good, which is more about kind of why I'm keen that the industry embrace something like this and do it in this sort of way. I can't remember. Could we tell Ryanair, or do they help, or did you advise the crew? How did that work?
You don't have to,
Yeah.
but there was no we'll say direct way of saying that, except for the fact that we had booked OCS,
Yeah.
and that they represented you, so they were the ones that could flag it
Speak
with
to
the
the check-in.
the check-in staff, and then they
And the
would-
boarding staff, and then
and
probably
they
told the crew.
to the crew as well. But the crew were super as well.
Yeah.
You know, like they would say to you, is everything okay? You know, in a nice, discreet way. They didn't, they were very much aware. It was obviously, that Rory had additional needs. And that's something as well that I spoke to you just before we came in. You know, a child with autism may have no physical,
Absolutely.
sorry, I just hit them. It may have no physical, outwardly signs that they have a disability. It is what is known as a hidden disability. But once he starts what they call stimming, which is waving his hands in the air or flicking his fingers or making audible sounds of high-pitched screaming and whatever, you know, you'll see the heads turn, or, you know, if he goes to grab my hair and pull me down or have me in a headlock, you know, these lovely,
You'll
it's
know.
actually affection, but, you know, people become very much acutely aware.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, there's
Yeah.
an issue here. But the staff never made us feel in any way, oh my God, how are we going to manage this child? Or can we keep away from them?
I think even the conversation where I was saying, how will he be on the aircraft? And you saying, oh, the way we'll definitely have to sit, we'll have to have somebody in front, because it is very annoying for a passenger on an aircraft, whether it's a child with additional needs or any child or an adult thumping the seat behind you. You know, like it really is a pet.
Opening and closing the tray top.
Yeah, it did kind of cover off on that. And I wasn't sure how we were going to advise the crew, because you can advise crew in terms of access to the aircraft, but beyond that, you don't want to. And there's also times when you don't want to draw unnecessary attention.
Sure,
so it's lovely to hear that the crew were, because like the crew are trained to deal with all of this, and that they were, you know, discreet, polite, but helpful.
No fuss, but you knew you could, you know, and they would just go, it's okay, it's okay. You know, there was never, you know, I mean, the funny story that I tell about coming home is that I was giving Rory a banana. And like, he was eating the banana, but he was very excited because we had to wait for half an hour on the tarmac before we took off. So he was getting a bit fed up. He wanted the sensation of the plane lifting off. He was wondering why we weren't going. So of course then the banana was launched halfway down the airplane, you know, and we're all kind of going, and I could see Paddy just put his head down. He was sitting in front of us, you know, and I just went, carry on, you know, as normal. This happens all the time, you know. And it was only when he threw the empty plastic bottle of water again 3 aisles down, I kind of just put my head down and went, oh Lord, you know, I'm sorry, but I mean, what can you say? You know, these things happen. But we got through the airport, and as I keep stressing, people have got to ask for help, because it will be so beneficial to you at the end of the day. You need that energy. We got to the airport, our bags came, the flight. We were very fortunate. Rory absolutely loved the whole airplane experience. And what is quite interesting is children with autism, they love to jump and they love the trampoline, and a lot of kids get that sensory input from the trampoline. So the sense and the sensation of tearing down the tarmac at top speed and feeling the vibration of the plane is really positive for a child like Rory, for his needs, because it shakes all his joints. He gets what they call proprioceptive input, believe it or not, there's a posh word for it, but he loves the vibration of the plane. He loved watching this, you know, the green fields of Dublin as you're taking off. He loved watching the other planes mooching around on the runways, and then all of a sudden this weightlessness as he lifted in the air. And you know, it's very difficult as a parent, because you don't know how much does your child really understand. But the minute we lifted off, he put his hand over to grab me, and of course I kind of went, he loves me. He wants me, you know. But it's fabulous. And he was so excited, and he leaned over into my arm and into my shoulder, and I was going, I know, isn't it great, Rory? It's so exciting. So he was really quite intrigued, you know. And I had put together a few notes before coming about, you know, things to remember, you know, kind of your survival pack for the flight. You know, I had, you know, snacks, drinks, you know, the way you have restrictions with your liquids that you can bring. I discovered these like dilutable MyWaddies in a tiny little 66ml bottle that you can carry in your hand luggage. Mix it in with the water, because Rory can drink lots of fluids then, because he loves them. You know, getting him up for a movement break. He loves being moving. Bit restrictive when you're on a flight, but give him plenty of drinks. He'll need to go to the loo. You can bring him to the toilet. It's a good way to get him up and moving. Hopefully nobody's trying to snooze, because he'll probably tap them on the head or give them an elbow on the way past. But your survival pack is important for the flight as well. I had my social story. I had a few simple little jigsaws.
Let's have a look, if we can, at the social story, because I didn't know about this. And I think, because my question was earlier, when did you tell Rory about the holiday and how did you go about it? So Can we?
Sure. Well, a social story,
a bit of time on this.
And that's actually another thing as well. If you go onto the airport website, under the whole auspices of additional needs, they have maps of the airport. They have pictures of the airport in PDF documents that parents can download if they want to prepare their child. So Rory, as I said, he is non-verbal, but he's a huge visual learner. So he recognises we used pictures to communicate with Rory. The very first method we used for communication was called PECS, Picture Exchange Communication. So Rory would take a picture, like for example of this, like of a car, and he would pull this off and hand it to me, and then he would tell me I want to go in the car, Mommy. Okay, whereas now he uses an app on a phone to communicate with me, and he's very adept and very skilled at asking for chips, burgers and ice cream. So
like his
I
style.
knew Rory was a real visual learner. So any parent with a child with additional needs, especially somebody who is non-verbal, will be familiar with the phenomenon of a social story, which I poo-pooed for many years until I actually had experience and saw how much it helped prepare Rory. So you know, Paddy, my husband, has a great expression, you know, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And that's with anything in life, but there is the additional stuff with the additional needs that you need to have it planned. So we put together a story about going on holidays. So planning for my holiday, it was called. Okay, so I knew I had the background information. I knew that we were going with Ryanair, we were going to a sunny resort. So we started off at the very beginning with what he was going to need, pictures of Dublin Airport. I actually had planned on driving out to the airport and bringing him through so that he would see it as well. You know, pictures of the airport, you know, all very simple things that you just Google and, you know, print them off, put them into a booklet format. This was the famous Frankie, who we had met when we were going to Paris as well. And I must fess up and say Frankie and I had worked in a former life together, so I was very lucky to have him on both occasions. But he worked with OCS and got us through. So I needed Rory to remember that somebody was going to be there to help us. And then obviously it was all about going through the security checks, drawing reference to the fact that things might be beeping, that he might have to be frisked down, even though with the best will in the world you try and ensure that the child would have nothing on it that would trigger or alarm. But even because Rory he's very impulsive, so he would tear through the security check-in without kind of, you know, when they wait and gesture you to call forward. Oh sure, Rory'd be gone through like, you know, like no man's, like a hare, you know. But even getting him to wait and practice waiting, and then right Rory, ready, steady, go, and or give him a countdown, because that would be very much a cue for Rory. So we kind of went through all the stages of it, and you know, we had down that we would put our stuff in the tray so he wouldn't get upset when he would see me putting his bag on a tray, and because he'd want to be pulling it off and taking it, saying that's mine, kind of, you know, that, you know, we had flagged all of that with him, and then going through the security. So it was a step by step. Now, some of these we didn't get to spend too long in because it was just really just to flag it with him. Like, we'd no interest in going through duty free. The days of buying fags and booze are over, kind of, you know. And then I wanted him to know that we probably would have to wait before we would get on the plane. So boarding the plane, walking out on the tarmac, visual pictures of the yellow and blue of the Ryanair seat so that it will be recognisable for him as well. Having to put on his seatbelt, and then the plane taking off. And then I just had a picture of a little boy sitting on the plane. But the carrot and the reward at the end was a picture of the resort we were staying in with the pool and a picture of him swimming. So as I had, for nearly 2 hours, I got this being tapped and tapped as if to say, are we there yet? Are we there yet, Mum? You know, but it was, you know, really advantageous for us to have this both outbound and coming home as well, because the morning we came home, I had the suitcases lined up alongst the wall and I had this book out, and Paddy had taken him out for a swim to the pool because we knew this would ground him and be lovely for him before we took off on the day. And when we came in and I was drying him off and getting him dressed up, he went over to the little table in the apartment and picked it up and pointed at the airplane to me.
So
and
there
I
was
said,
an excitement.
Yes, Rory. I said, you're right. We are going on the airplane today, but we have to wait. We have some hand gestures as well. We have to wait. And he was going, airplane. Like, you know, if he could speak, this is what he would have said to me. So that was really key to the prep of him going in. And I had asked the teachers in school I sent it into school so that the week in advance of him going on holidays, they would just take it out casually at the desk. Broach the whole subject with them of going through the airport. And of course they're so experienced as well at talking through the story, and it becomes nice, and he's sitting looking at them as if to say, airplane, you know, so it was good.
And really good, again, for us in the industry to know that, you know, we do our element around the services, the flights, the transfers, the accommodation, and the parents are supplementing all of the preparation with things like the social stories, because I would never have seen a prop like that. And to me then it kind of goes, okay, so he's going to be prepared for, like, I know OCS are going to deal with it. I should have been thinking, and this is a point, like, Dublin Airport are doing this, but I'm sure every airport has obligations and responsibilities for passengers with additional needs. So every airport in or out is going to be able to provide these services, maybe not to the same extent or maybe not to the same level, but I should have thought of that.
Yeah,
so
do
that's
we
a
need
tick
to
box.
ask? Yeah.
That's a tick box for me in terms of, for future, don't just think about the departure airport, think about the arrival airport. And I'm sure as well, the likes of Cork and Shannon Airport
Without a doubt.
have exactly the same facilities. So we don't have to worry about the facility we're using. They're likely to have this. And again, it's going back to ask
the question.
Ask, and I also like that reference you made to Paddy's line about, prepare, or
the other ways,
yeah, absolutely, to go down the tubes on you.
So day to day, I guess the holiday was kind of a normal Connor family.
Yeah, the holiday itself. So the resort was lovely when we arrived, and yes, we had our ground floor apartment. It was super. The kids were so excited. We were so excited.
Yeah.
And actually, another point that when I had spoken to you about booking the holiday, we were going to book a transfer of a private cab to pick us up and bring us to the airport. And you said, look, would you not think about hiring a car, guys? It's quite easy to drive, yada, yada, yada. And actually, it was super. It was perhaps the best idea. Now, I ended up doing the driving, which I wasn't too happy about. But anyway, there was abdication of responsibility there. Anyway, that was
my reason for doing that was
cost.
Cost and cost, benefit, and control, because
it was fab.
You can have queues with transfers, you can have queues with car hire, but I kind of felt if it's you lot together as a family for the transfer, it'll be easier in terms of comms. And the cost of the car hire for the week is more or less the cost of the transfers.
Absolutely.
And the car, I would regularly hire a car and it wouldn't move from my property, but at least it's at the door in case I have a bad weather day, need to go shopping, or need to find something
else to do.
So from that point of view,
it was actually great. And I mean, that will be a huge anxiety piece that a lot of parents would have in relation to going on holidays, because you're stuck in the one place. And, if your child is going off the wall and having what is described often as a meltdown, and you just want to get out of town or go somewhere else, what are you going to do? So we had the flexibility of the car. So when you ask me what was our day-to-day Connor holiday like, we got up in the morning, the weather was warm, it wasn't particularly sunny, which was fine, because we weren't going to be out with our factor 50 on grilling ourselves and turning over by the pool. But what we did was we would plan a day and say, you know what, tomorrow maybe we might go to the beach in the morning, or we might, because we, as you said, we went to Alcudia, maybe we'll go into the old town and have a look around. And just something to make to go back on what you said there is, when you get to the resort, speak to the staff in the hotel and flag it with them. And I did that because Rory is incontinent at night, so he wets the bed every night. Whilst I had brought mattress protectors and pillow protectors with me, there was huge additional laundry. And I went over one day to get coins for the laundry machines to wash the sheets, at which the woman behind reception said, "What are you doing washing laundry? Madam, you're on your holidays." And I said, "I know, but there's no laundry facility on a Wednesday or whatever," when I had read. And she said, "You've told me." That within an hour they had dropped down additional sheets and bed linen.
Wow.
And I just kind of went, do you know what? That's really nice. That's understanding. And then I went back to the same woman, because again, you build up a relationship with somebody, and I said, is there a nice beach somewhere nearby? Or is there, I don't want to go to the market on the Saturday or the Sunday morning because it's going to be manic and it's going to be busy and Rory's not going to manage it. She took her time, she took out a map, and it's as you said, it's all about the communication piece. And she made those couple of day trips out. And so having the car hire meant that we could go to maybe far off beaches that were less packed. That, when Rory decided that he wanted to strip off naked, when he decided he wanted to strip off naked, it was absolutely fine, because there was very little people around. And we weren't embarrassed, and you could get in and do that. And after half an hour, when he'd had enough, well, then we said, okay, we'll pack up again. And we just got into the car.
It just gave you more control.
We went to the aquarium in Palma. Oh my God, it was breathtaking. I actually was emotional there, because both of the children, we were all entranced with it. But even, you know, when we went up to pay and we went around the side, and Rory was so excited because he'd got out of the car and he could have a little run, because again, that's the impulsivity in his behaviour. And he ran around, and of course, you know, they get you to pose for the family photograph on the way in, and we were like, you know, for I don't know what, but like, you know, we were trying to make it as much crack as possible for the kids. And Paddy was doing a bit of, you know, John Travolta poses, and Claude was saying, oh, you're so embarrassing. And sure, poor Rory just loved it, because the next minute he discovered there was like a water pond that, of course, he thought he could get into. But, you know, to go around and watch them mesmerised looking at the underwater fish and the sea life, and like, there are things we couldn't have done without the benefit of the car as well. So that was a really good call.
So we've
really
a couple of good learnings, and we probably need to kind of wrap it up in terms of pulling all of this together. And from one of the call outs I'm saying is that the people who are providing the service, be it the travel agent, be it the person at the airport, be it the crew, you know, the people in reception at the hotel, or the guys in the ice cream queue in Clontarf, if people know, the kind of nicer side of them can come out and come to the fore. So it's, again, the ask for help. So let's pull it together in terms of your top suggestions for parents in a similar situation to you, planning a holiday or thinking about a holiday. What should they do?
Ask for help.
Yep.
Is the key message about it. Consider, sit down. I know it sounds like you're project managing it, but you have to project manage it. Consider what you want out of the holiday. Consider your resort. Consider the time of year you're travelling at. You know, make these decisions before you go for help. So have some kind of a little bit of groundwork done yourself before you go to a travel agent. Identify your biggest priorities for the holiday. Try and decide what all your expectations are of the holiday. You can have two people in the room that are poles apart on what they're thinking, you know, of what they want from the holiday. So decide what type of a holiday you want. Make sure that you get a reputable, good travel agent that can guide you. Do not take offence at anything they ask. Try and give them as much information as possible. So a keynote is communication. I mean, it is of paramount importance that you as a parent give as much information as possible to your travel agent, because they will do their very best to try and match it. There is no miracle cure for autism. There is no miracle tablet. There is no miracle answer to all of your needs. But if you can eliminate the potential risks and stresses for you on your holiday, try and set yourself up for success, not for failure.
I think that is just brilliant advice. I'm hoping what we can do is use this in the Irish Travel Agents Association, in the industry in general, to raise the awareness as to how the process works and what we can do. I'm hoping we can kind of calm down the risk, legal and insurance people in terms of what we do, because I think there's just massive benefit in all of us getting off the island, in all of us having a holiday, irrespective of what needs we have. And I want to say a huge thank you to you, to Paddy, to Rory and to Clodagh for sharing the story with us, because it is just brilliant. It's like goosebumps. It is really pure goosebumps, Catriona, and it is massively beneficial for us to know, because I think then we can do something. And that's the good bit.
Everything is possible.
Thank you very much.